Next page. I'm Jerry Weaver. I'm an alcoholic. Good to be here tonight. My sobriety date is July the 2nd, 1989. There's still people in coats that don't think that's real. I think I'm lying about that, but as far as I know, that's accurate. And I've got a home group. Home group is There Is a Solution. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Macedonia Methodist Church in Cary. It's a good group. Y'all come check us out sometime. We've got a bunch of home group members with me tonight. Now, if it's hard to beat a good home group. And we come here, we try to come every month on what we call the Freedom Van. So if you've ever seen us pull in, we're not from a treatment center, but we're in a big white van and we look like we came from a treatment center, but we play loud, raunchy music and probably tell a bunch of lies in between, and what stays on the van doesn't leave the van. And it's funny, sometimes we'll get newcomers to come with us and they'll hear some of us singing sometimes some raunchy music, and they're like, I can't believe y'all do that. I thought you were spiritual. So anyway, I appreciate y'all coming. The other thing is there's several of us that we get asked to do a lot of stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous. So there's 5 or 6 of us on the van tonight that give a bunch of talks, and we try to support one another when people are giving talks. So we'll go listen to each other. Now we're all tired of listening to each other, but that's turned into we have a bingo game going on. So it's going on right now. So if you hear or see somebody laughing or raising their hand, we basically predict what the speaker's going to say. So we pick stories, and there'll be a winner at the end of the night. So my task is to try to tell some stories that they've never heard, so they can't punch their bingo card. So anyway, worthless information. It is good to be here tonight. If you were here last January and you made it, we're here for another year. We made it around the calendar for another year. Hopefully everybody stayed sober. I know I did, and I'm grateful for that. Prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I could not stay sober. Didn't really try. I tried a lot of ways to turn my life around and to start off on a new foot every day. But a lot of times it really didn't involve not drinking. Drinking seemed like it was a solution. And I was a guy that saw what alcohol did to people. I had come from a long line of drinkers, long line of partiers. It was just something that everybody did. It wasn't anything that was shied away from. I mean, it's just what people did. And it kind of scared me when I would see what alcohol did to family members, and I never thought I'd be like that. What happened was I would probably be, before I ever took the first drink, I was a guy that was scared, didn't understand what that was, but I was just petrified and felt like that everybody else knew stuff and I didn't. I was confused about things, and I had lots of questions about stuff, but I was afraid to ask people what the answers were. And I guess if I was growing up today, they'd have all kinds of diagnoses for that and lots of prescription medications and stuff for it. I guess now looking back on it, they would call that anxiety and depression and suicidal tendencies as a kid. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I know that at the age of 12, I was at a friend's house, and we started experimenting with some of his dad's booze that he had at the bar in the basement. And I drank some Old Granddad, and all that fear and confusion and doubt about stuff went away. And I just loved the way that it made me feel that night. I can remember it just like it's right now. And it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to me up to that point in my life. And what happened to me was I continued to drink every opportunity I got from that point to the day that I quit. I just loved drinking. And who was that? Ashley? Yeah. All right. All right. I was, it threw me off a little bit. It's all right. That's good. And I drank as a teenager. I got into a lot of trouble. I don't have to drink to get into trouble. I'll get in trouble drunk or not drunk. It doesn't matter. I'm chaotic and rebellious, and love people to dare me to do stuff, and I'll do it, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. And that led to getting into a bunch of trouble with the law and going into the Air Force at the age of 18, hoping to get my life turned around and get some discipline and some responsibility. That didn't happen. I got into the Air Force, and immediately, the first opportunity I got to drink, I started drinking. And I never stopped, basically, is what happened. And I got married around that same time, thinking that was going to fix something. And that just led to more drinking for me. I didn't slow down a bit once I got married. I think I doubled down on the drinking at that point. And it was interesting though. Her dad, my that goulash you made, Aloha, is coming back up, but whatever it was, my father-in-law was the first person that ever said anything to me about my drinking, and I remember he made a call on me not long after we had gotten married, and I didn't like too much what he had to say to me, and he didn't like too much the way that I was treating his daughter. Looking back on it, he was absolutely, right about what he was saying. And I can remember saying things to him like, this is my house. I'm the man of the house. I make money. I'll do what I want to do, and stuff like that. And I think I probably asked him to leave. And funny thing about that is, not long after that, he was like some of the other people that were trying to help me. He actually thought that if I would just stop doing drugs and drink, that things would be okay. And I don't think I've ever told this, but I can remember him saying things like, well, just drink some beer, just do this and do that. And I was like, well, okay. So he was actually trying to get me to stop and slow down. Now, he drank a lot. I know now, I would have always thought he was an alcoholic if I'd have known what that was back then, but he drank a lot. He drank just about every day. Matter of fact, he may have drank every day. And so he was on his own little spiel about trying to get me to stop. So there was this thing in Coates called Farmer's Day. It's kind of like Mule Days in Benson, but it's a little smaller, but it's just a big, basically, street party and parade, and all the rednecks get out and do goofy stuff and get drunk and get in fights. And well, he came by and picked me up it was like the Saturday night, and there was this big street dance. And I know now he came by to pick me up to stop me from doing some crazy stuff that night. So he had this old customized Astro van. Back then it was pretty cool. And he had a big old cooler full of beer in there, and he's like, we're going to ride around and drink some beer, and then we'll go up to the street dance. I don't know where. I think his daughter, my wife, might have been at the street dance with her sister or something already. So anyway, we're riding around Coates, and we're drinking drinking a lot of beer and maybe hitting a few shots. And we end up at the street dance. And so when I go to a street dance or any kind of club or bar, I act like a fool. I mean, I can never stay in them for a long period of time because I'll either like disrupt somebody or get into a fight or steal or break something, and then I get asked to leave or I get thrown out. Well, we're at the street dance, and some of this they tell me later, but I'm like, people are out there dancing, this band's playing, and I'm evidently like out there like busting people up and trying to dance with people's wives and their girlfriends. And the chief of police, his name was Tommy Williford, he comes out there, and he's going to try to like, I guess, get me out of the street dance. And I find out later that I like started trying to dance with him, and I wouldn't let him. I wouldn't let him go, and I wouldn't let him take me. And so the next day, JR, that was my father-in-law, he comes to the house and says, checks on me, make sure I'm all right. He's like, man, you scared the crap out of me last night. He says, I'm never going to drink again. He's been sober ever since, as far as I know. So I 12-stepped a guy before I even knew what 12-step was. That was not on their bingo card. And so far as I know, that guy never drank again. So I guess we will call him a heavy drinker. But that's the type of stuff that I do, is I scare people, and I act like a fool. And things went downhill from there. It wasn't long after that, my wife left, and then she came back, and then she would leave, and then she'd come back. We had some people, we were having some people over at the house for Christmas. It was the Christmas before I got sober, and I caused a scene on purpose. I didn't like the way it was going. They weren't doing the party the right way, and I basically picked a fight with her on purpose in front of a bunch of people so I'd have an excuse to leave. And that's what I did. I left, and I had already been gone for several days, and I left, and we started riding the roads, me and a couple of other guys, and that led to me hearing voices in my head and telling me that I needed to get my life in order and slow down and do things, and I couldn't shut all that off. And my brother's solution to that was go to church. And so New Year's Day of 1989, I rolled into a Free Will Baptist church one morning with my brother, and I had no idea what was wrong with me. And I think he had a pretty good idea, but I really didn't know that I was alcoholic or that I had alcoholism. And that morning I went into church with him, and I looked rough. I had pants on that were about 4 inches too short, and I had an old silk disco shirt on, and people looked at me funny, and they had an altar call, and I got up there in front of about 200 people and started crying, and people came up and laid hands on me and prayed with me. And I didn't have a clue what was going on, and I know that when I left there that morning, now those people helped me. I am absolutely not criticizing them or mocking them. For the next 3 or 4 months, they tried to help me, but I left there thinking my life was just going to get better, and nothing immediately changed. So of course none of that stuff works in my mind. And I went right back to drinking, not just a few days after that. And for the next 6-7 months, just drank like it was nobody's business and did all kinds of crazy things. Tried lots of different ways to like slow down and get my life in order. And I started listening to gospel music, and there was this, early in the morning, I would leave Coates and I would drive to Pope Air Force Base on this 1972 orange Volkswagen Beetle that I had. Now, if you're going to drink and drive, an orange Bug in like Harnett, Johnston, Cumberland County in the mid-'80s was not the car to drive. I mean, if you get caught once, they're automatic. There's no other orange 72 Beetles around. And you know, those things didn't have any heat. And anyway, but I would drive around in this thing, and for some reason, the radio would pick up this station out of Laurinburg, North Carolina, and there was this guy on there named Brother Strickland. Anybody know Brother Strickland? Yeah, and he would play this gospel music, and I would turn that stuff on early in the morning, driving to Pope Air Force Base, and I would be singing gospel music, and I had this little pocket New Testament that the church had given me, and there's a bingo thing there, and I would read scripture to myself, and I would pray. I don't know what I was praying about. I was looking back on it, I was more praying that, you know, things would just get better in my life and my wife would come back and stuff like that. And I would just drink. I'd get drunk by lunch most days, and may or may not, you know, come back to work, may or may not go home. And I shaved my head around this same time, thinking that was going to fix something. And so I'm sporting a shaved head, listening to gospel music, got that New Testament out. I'm preaching to people at work about their sinning and all the things that they're doing. And looking back on it, man, it was hilarious. I'd be in the break room at work, and I would be telling people about all these bad things they're doing, these things, how they need to get their lives in order. And then I'd go out in the parking lot, go into the car and hit the Thunderbird wine or the Aristocrat vodka, depending on what it was that day, and pop a couple of Percocets and go back in there and preach to them some more and pull that Testament out and read scripture to them, and craziness. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And, you know, there were many, many, you know, nights when I would leave work and start drinking, and I just wouldn't go home. And we'd stay out partying, and we'd come right back to work with the same fatigue zone we had the day before, no sleep, show right back up for roll call. I'd make these promises to not do it anymore, and by 11 o'clock I'd be drunk. It was just like this vicious cycle. And it was, you know, looking back on it, it was rough. Especially trying to show up for roll call and trying to hide it from the Air Force. And it helped that I had a supervisor that drank just as bad as I did. Matter of fact, he's the first guy that shaved his head. And that's how I got that idea. Shaved head will not keep you sober, by the way. It worked for a few days. And I got suicidal, and you hear people say that suicide is like selfish. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. It seemed like it was letting people off the hook to me. I mean, I know my family was tired of dealing with me, and I know my wife was, and it just looked like the only way out for me, and it looked like a good way for other people that they wouldn't have to deal with me. And first suicide attempt, I actually came to in a tobacco barn with a girl that wasn't my wife, and I was trying to figure out what happened the night before, and it wasn't good. And I went home and took a big old bottle of pills. I don't remember what they were. But after I took them, I told my wife that I took them. And I remember my stepmom came over there and started making me throw up, and I got sick as a dog. I was sick for about 3 days, and was real like disoriented, and I'd get up and try to walk, and I'd fall down. I recovered from that, okay, and then the next smart idea was I had a dog that had mange, And the vet had given me this poison to kill the mange on the dog, and I pulled some of it into a syringe one night, and shot it up my arm, laid down on the floor there in the kitchen, this house that we were living in Coates, and went away from here for a little while. And when I came to from all that, ended up going into the hospital, and I was in the Old Raleigh Community Hospital for, I think it was about 5 days. And when I got out, I knew I would never drink again. I wouldn't go back to living that way. I mean, I was going to turn over a fresh start, and turn over a new leaf, and things were going to be different. I meant that. I mean, I really desired that and wanted that. And a few days out of the hospital, I was right back drinking again. And I justified it in my mind that if I drank small beer and ate a Slim Jim to coat my stomach, that it would be okay. Right? Beer can't hurt you, especially if you get some of that grease from the Slim Jim in your stomach. I mean, that coats your stomach, right? And the good news about that is I never had the mange since then, and I think it's helped my hair as I've aged to not fall out as bad as some people's, Earl. And I didn't really know what was wrong with me, but I knew that I was like a lot of us, I was in just a very dark place, and I continued to pray and to do things that people would tell me to do, and nothing would change. And I continued to drink, and I came to one morning at this house that we're now getting ready to lose, and I've been discharged out of the Air Force, and it's a long story. I actually got an honorable discharge out of the Air Force, but I was under an investigation for me and another guy had robbed this guy in Fayetteville one night, and they damaged the car up pretty good, and he filed a fake insurance claim, and I was part of that. And anyway, the OSI, the Air Force, was investigating all that, but this Captain Wiggs, she hated me. She always was telling me to get a haircut. Part of why I shaved my head was to piss her off, but they ended up letting me out. But I came to it at the house, and there was a dude and another girl in the house, and it was not a good situation. That guy's name was Squirrel Man, if that gives you any indication as to kind of what was going on. And I left the house, walking. My house. I left them in there, and I left. I just left. I was just disgusted. And I remember I get uptown, and there used to be this store there called the Easy Shop that everybody went to. And I walked in. I was walking up into the parking lot of the Easy Shop, and my father-in-law, who had quit drinking because I 12-stepped him that night at the street dance, he was pumping gas, and he saw me walk up, and by this time they're not really talking to me, and he looked over at me and just went like this right here, and it I don't know, something happened to me. And I borrowed a car that day from a friend of mine named Shaggy. Now, we called him Shaggy because he looked like Shaggy on the Scooby-Doo cartoon. And I drove that car back to the house. Those two people were gone. I pulled the car in this little garage that was there, and I laid down by the exhaust pipe, left the car running. And I just wanted to die. I absolutely just wanted to get out of here. And I ended up obviously not going away from that either. And I can remember thinking, after I kind of recovered from that, having these thoughts look at what you people have done to me. I mean, it's just so bizarre looking back on it. I mean, there wasn't anybody there, but I'm blaming people for what's happened to me. And those folks have done nothing but try to help me. I couldn't see it. And matter of fact, I didn't see it until I took our steps. And I made it for about another week or two, and left the guy's house one morning and to go write another bad check at the grocery store. Anybody ever write any bad checks? I don't know, they kept cashing them, so I kept writing them, and I was like, yeah, I mean, they eventually catch up to you, and you'll start seeing them on the walls at the stores. I don't think they do that anymore, but, and, you know, I left that guy's house that morning. I had no plans to get sober or to get my life in order. I just wanted to get some more liquor, and had kind of accepted the fact I was just going to dribble off to some miserable end of existence. And while I was walking down the road that morning, it was pretty early, I had these thoughts that came to my mind that life shouldn't be ending, it should be starting, and that, you know, if I didn't make a change or do something, that it was going to be over. And I kind of welcomed that idea, but then again I didn't. And I said a couple of things out loud. I said, there's got to be something better than this. And I said, God, please help me. And all I can tell you is that from that moment to this moment, I've been sober. I didn't know anything about alcoholism or Alcoholics Anonymous. I had never heard of it. I know it's unusual for people to not hear about Alcoholics Anonymous today, but I had never heard of AA. I didn't know anything about it. And didn't really know what was wrong with me. I mean, if you'd had asked me what was wrong with me, I would have given you a bunch of reasons of what I thought was wrong with me, but none of that would have been accurate. And what I believe that what happened to me that morning was that, I don't know, some power entered in my life, or I became willing, or a crack opened up inside of me to where I started making some different decisions. And it didn't come from me. I didn't have the ability to make a different decision. My plan was to go to Clyde's and the grocery store, and that's not what happened. I ended up in a detox, and a guy from AA came in and talked to me. I had never heard anything like that. And just very baseline, that guy gave me hope and helped me to realize that I wasn't alone. And not long after that, I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And matter of fact, my very first AA meeting, best I can remember, it was a speaker meeting, and a guy, Steve and Paige know this guy, Jim might know him, his name was Buddy. And he gave a talk, and he had been in prison for doing some heinous stuff, and he had gotten out. But he gave this talk that, I mean, I had never heard anything like that before in my life. And it just hit me that, man, if this dude can stay sober, I probably can too. And it just gave me a lot of hope. And then I heard this, then my second meeting, it was another speaker meeting, and a guy named Mike Herr spoke. A few of y'all know him or knew him. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but and it was the same experience that this guy told his story, and the way he was then compared to how he was, it was inconsistent. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And I heard that story, and I was like, man, if that joker can stay sober, to be sure, I can stay sober. And again, it gave me hope. And I was told to keep an open mind and to listen and to pay attention and to try to hear something that I could identify with and that might help me. And those things helped me quite a bit, was going to a lot of speaker meetings and listening to other people's stories and trying to keep an open mind. And I was introduced to the ideas of sponsorship and home group, and I was introduced to the idea that the solution to my problem is in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I took the steps. And what happened to me was I realized that I was an alcoholic. I realized that I was powerless over alcohol, which means that I'm physically powerless, that once I start drinking, I can't stop and I can't predict what I'm going to do. And if that was all that was wrong with me, then just put the plug in the jug and you'll be okay. The problem is, the alcoholic can't put the plug in the jug. The alcoholic has a mind that tells us that it's okay to keep drinking, right? That I've developed what the book describes as a mental obsession. It calls it insanity, plain insanity, and that I can't bring into my mind with sufficient amount of force what happened to me yesterday or a few minutes ago or a week or a month ago to prevent me from taking the first drink. And the book actually says that we have no mental defense against the first drink. It's really the crux of the problem. And so the question is, how do I stay away from the first drink? Well, that's where Alcoholics Anonymous comes in. That's where a power greater than myself comes in, and where people in Alcoholics Anonymous come in. And I realized that early on that I've never questioned whether I had alcoholism. After hearing people's stories and reading the descriptions in our book, I know that's me. I knew it was me the first time I read it. I know even more today that it's me. That there's no way that I can drink successfully. But just knowing that will not keep me sober. And I believe that. I believe I'm alcoholic, and I absolutely believe that that nothing can help me but God. And if other stuff could help me, I wouldn't have needed Alcoholics Anonymous. If religion worked, or medication worked, or psychiatry worked, or discipline from the military worked, or the love of a mother, the love of a wife, threats of the sheriff, if that stuff was sufficient to overcome alcoholism, I would have never come to Alcoholics Anonymous, because I tried all that stuff, and all those people tried to help me, and I didn't stay sober. And for some reason, when I got here, that was clear to me when it was kind of described to me that way. And I know I need a power greater than myself if I'm going to stay sober. Matter of fact, I welcome the idea, because I'm banking that that's going to work, because nothing else did. And I turned my life over to that at about 2 weeks sober, and as far as I know, I've never taken that commitment back. That prayer that I said and turned my will and my life over to God at a couple weeks sober, I believe the only way I could take that back would be to take a drink. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't made a lot of mistakes sober and done some goofy stuff. I don't think that has anything to do with my lack of taking the third step, personally. And I wrote an inventory, and I shared that inventory with another guy, and I realized that, just like the book says, I'm a guy that's governed by fear. Every decision I make is based in fear. Every decision that I don't make is based in fear. And that I'm selfish and I'm self-centered. All I want is people to do what I want them to do, and I want things to happen the way that I want them to happen, and when they don't, I get mad or angry or act like a little baby. And that stuff was pretty clear to me. It's even more clear today that's true. But I found out, early on by taking the steps that I had actually done a really bad job of running my life. I had done a bad job of letting people help me. And I had this perception in my mind about how life was and about how people were that was just completely false. It was fictitious. None of it was real. And I'm a guy that creates stories, and I'm so self-conscious. I think that everything's about me. I can remember being young. I don't know why this just popped in my head. And this shows you how self-conscious I am. John Hinckley had shot Ronald Reagan. And now, I had actually seen it on TV. I was watching when it happened. And my first thought is, I wonder if they think I had something to do with it. It's an absolutely true story. I would watch TV, and there were it's absolutely true. There was a string of people starting fires in Harnett County years ago. I had nothing to do with it. But I would drive around knowing that the detectives thought I was doing it. And now I have started some fires, but not those. And, but that's how self-conscious I am. I mean, you hear people nowadays say it a lot. You walk into a room and you think everybody's talking about you and all that. I struggled with that for years. And so anyway, I realized that a lot of that stuff just ain't true by taking the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think Hinckley's out now. I don't know what he's doing, but he's still on house arrest, I think. But they've never contacted me, so I guess it wasn't true. But that's just how crazy the mind is. That's why drinking works so well. It shuts that stuff down. All that stuff that stirs around in your head. Anyway, I took the steps and I made amends to some family, and I made good on a bunch of bad checks and financial stuff that I had early on. I was just told that if I wanted to stay sober, I had to take responsibility and start taking action. And I'm so grateful for the groups and the people that I came into contact with in AA, because I was never given any of those silly, one-off statements that you hear in AA. I was told that, hey, we get better by taking action. And what that means is that we're going to pray, we're going to read, we're going to go make amends, we're going to go try to help people. We're going to go out of our way to try to be of service, and that's how we get better. It's not by thinking about stuff or feeling stuff. Thinking and feeling is important, but you can't rely on that to live on. The only thing that we can trust is what we actually do. And I'm grateful that was kind of drilled into my head early on. I was also told that anything that I put in front of my recovery, that I would probably lose that if I made that stuff a priority. Of course you got to work, and it's okay to be in a relationship, and it's good to get back with your family and in the community and all that stuff. But for me, if that becomes a priority over just helping somebody and praying and doing a few simple things, I'm in trouble. And I've seen that happen to lots of folks. And you can do it all. There's time for everything. And I started making some of those amends that I thought would never be rectified with some family. It all worked out. I had financial amends that I never thought I would ever get through. Slowly over time, by just trying to do the right thing and taking actions of sending a little bit of money, stuff got paid off. I was taught how to do that by people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I know is that the steps of AA work for an alcoholic, that there's unlimited power here in Alcoholics Anonymous for me. And now I remember, I can't see the clock. I think I got about another 45 minutes. I was sober a few years and moved to Rocky Mount. And lived in, was that Brantley Apartments? Over on Sunset, yeah. And that was when me and my first wife had gotten back together. And we were living over there in the apartments, and that's when I had met Paige and Steve, and Paige had started sponsoring me. Paige has been my sponsor now, I think, for close to almost 34 years, maybe 33. And anyway, that's when my first wife decided that she had liked other guys more than she liked me. And I'll never forget it when she came in, when she told me about it. And I was like, okay, I handled it fairly well. And she left. And I can remember at this time, so I'm stealing money from work, not telling anybody. And then she leaves, and I was not real happy about it. I wanted to keep trying to make it work out. But I can remember she didn't pay the light bill. And the electricity went off in the apartment over there. And I'm like, I'm laying on the couch, crying like a baby. I'm 3 or 4 years sober, about 4 years sober at this point, crying and look at what God has done to me. And I'm blaming people and all this, and I had to hurry up and get through this. But I really the world got dark, and I started, thinking that, I had been wronged and this stuff doesn't work. Your mind will tell you all kinds of stuff. And here's what happened was that me and Paige used to go to this retreat in Watha. And I had a conversation with an old gentleman there at this retreat. And we were having a conversation about God and about how to practice principles and do the right thing. And this guy prayed with me. And after that, and part of that conversation was you got to be true to yourself, and you got to start standing for something, and you got to stop playing games. And I remember I left there, and that's when I had, I guess, the first conversation with Paige about stealing money, and he told me some stuff to do, which included going back to my employer and making amends. I thought that was drastic. And I remember telling him, man, I don't know if I can do that, Paige. And I said, we might need to talk to your sponsor about this. It may have not gone exactly like that, but anyway, that's what happened. So me and Paige met with Steve I'm trying to remember this. The kettle. I kept calling it the skillet. Steve wanted to meet at this place called the Kettle. It was a dump. Anyway, bottom line is that over a period of time there, I got divorced. I made an amends to my employer for stealing money, paid the money back, didn't get fired, got through the divorce, best thing that ever happened for both of us. And I did that because I got through all that because Alcoholics Anonymous works, and because people in Alcoholics Anonymous were willing to help me. And people would go out of their way to help me. They would be inconvenienced to help me. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's not about me and my recovery, and it's not about self-care. I love self-care. I mean, I love taking care of myself. But there's a limit to that. That's not Alcoholics Anonymous. I've gotten better by thinking about the welfare of somebody else, just like people thought about the welfare of me. And there's a lot more to tell, but what happened to me after that was I realized that Alcoholics Anonymous was sufficient for me, and that the principles and the power and the people and the ability to be of service to others is unlimited in AA. And I've done a lot of stuff sober. I've done a lot of spiritual stuff sober. I've helped a lot of people that are really involved in other stuff. And for my money, I will, no matter what I try to do, there's no more opportunity to actually serve God's children and to be a servant of God than there is right here in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no reason for me to look anywhere else. If I really believe that my purpose is to help other people, then, my God, there's 70 people right here to help. Why would I need to go anywhere else? Why would I think there's something better somewhere else? There's not. So what happened to me was my purpose is right here. Right? That I carry out the same thing that guy did to me that morning when he took time out of his schedule to come help me in that detox. When these two guys showed up at the Kettle to help get me back on track with my life, I've never forgotten that. And so my job and my responsibility and my obligation to our 12th step is to carry the message that was carried to me to another alcoholic. And when I do that, I never fall short. Thank you.
Thank you.